Evan Carter took the baseball world by storm last fall, but did those expectations get set way too high for the rookie? And what should the Rangers actually hope for from their 21-year-old potential superstar? We're talking about all that and more on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked onto the World Series champion Texas Rangers. I'm Bryce Patrick, a cripplingly addicted Texas Rangers fan covering this team for 10 seasons, including all 5 as the founder and host of this podcast. Thank y'all so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. If you're not already, you can follow me on Twitter at Bryce Patrick. You can follow the show at Locked On Rangers. Hit subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform and on YouTube, where the best way you can help grow the show is to comment nearly any single thing below. Now, before we get into what to expect from Evan Carter, why there is so much hype justifiably around this kid, and some really great developments on the most important pitching storyline for the Rangers this spring training, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Now, the Rangers won their 5th spring training game yesterday. On Thursday, the Rangers are just absolutely dominating the Cactus League en route to an Iguana Cup, the most important trophy of spring training. The Rangers just on a bit of a kick of getting these trophies. Exactly 4 months ago today, they were hoisting the Commissioner's Trophy for the first time ever, the most important event in the history of mankind, the Earth, the solar system, this universe, and all other subsequent universes that may or may not exist. The Rangers are World Series champs, and they look absolutely amazing this spring training. Just absolutely astounding. I talked a lot yesterday about Ezekiel Duran coming up clutch, just looking so good this spring training. He continues to absolutely astound. Had another extra base hit in yesterday's game, his first double of spring training. The guy is hitting .462 with an 1192 OPS in spring training so far. Not the most important counting stats in spring training, not the most important or any stats in spring training, but the guy just looks good. As does Josh Smith. Smith's played shortstop yesterday, worked a hit by pitch, because that's what Josh Smith does. He gets on base, he works good at bats, and he also hit the absolute tarnation out of a ringing double, hitting .400 with a 1,300 OPS so far in spring training. And Andrew Knizner continued to crush it in spring training as well. He is also hitting .400 with a 1,200 OPS as the backup catcher. Nice to see him getting some reps. Nice to see him putting up some offensive numbers. Not that it matters all that much, because the Rangers have Jonah Heim, and I don't see any kind of spring training breakout from Andrew Knizner supplanting Jonah Heim as the starting catcher for the Rangers. But in yesterday's game, most of the important developments came on the pitching side. The Rangers had their ace on the hill, Nathan Eovaldi, who went 3 innings, was scheduled to go either 3 innings or 45 pitches. And because he was just so darn good, so darn efficient, he had to go throw some extra pitches after his bullpen, trying to get that workload up, and all the comments around what he's doing this spring training, how he looks, everything about Eovaldi is looking absolutely fantastic. End of the day with 3 hits, no walks, 5 strikeouts, a couple of hits, and an earned run that came on a ringing double. He threw just 10 pitches in the first to get a couple of strikeouts, and he got his total 5 strikeouts. He had 2 looking on fastballs, 1 on the curveball, 1 on the cutter, 1 on the splitter. All those outside of the 2 on the fastball were swinging strikeouts. The guy looked nasty. He got some other swinging strikes as well. I mean, the guy was sitting in the mid-90s, which is exactly what we're looking for. Exactly the biggest storyline for me is, how sharp does Eovaldi look? What's his velocity? How is his pitch count coming? How ready is he going to be for opening day? Because he's going to be so incredibly important to this rotation with the other aces on the shelf. I guess just 2 other guys I'd qualify as aces. Tyler Mahle, I don't know I go there quite yet, but DeGrom, definitely ace caliber pitcher, and Max Scherzer, borderline at this point, but still a very, very valuable pitcher. But Nathan Eovaldi, the postseason, and when the Rangers need him most, is an ace-level pitcher. last year in the first half. I feel like we forget how incredibly good he was in the first half. I mean, I know Garrett Cole was incredible for the entire season. Very deserved first Cy Young of his career. Kind of insane that was his first Cy Young. But in the first half of the season, Nate Eovaldi was absolutely magnificent. Started 18 games at 2.83 ERA in 117 and 2/3 innings, 10-3, with a couple of complete games, including a shutout. Nearly had a second complete game shutout and 3 complete games in the first half, but he stepped up huge, and the Rangers needed him very, very badly in that first half. They're going to need him really, really darn badly in the first half this year while they're waiting for Max Scherzer and Tyler Mahle and Jacob deGrom to get off the IL and get fully healthy and acclimated into this rotation. Eovaldi is definitely the clear ace of this staff. He is a big game pitcher. He is coming through when the Rangers need him most, and so far hitting, sitting in the mid-90s, touching as high as 98, according to Jared Sandler on the broadcast. That is exactly what the Rangers are looking for this spring training. I mean, they need that so desperately badly. Seeing him go up to 45 pitches, seeing him get through 3 innings, seeing him, being pretty much on track with where he came into camp. It was exactly where the Rangers were asking him to. There was no setbacks, nothing like that of any kind. I mean, he is getting a little bit older. He is 34 now, just turned 34 in mid-February, and he's still looking just as good as ever. A 3-win season last year, and I feel like his overall numbers weren't that impressive because, he ended up with 3.6 ERA for the season. But you look at that second half numbers and those 7 starts that he made in the second half. He only went less than 4 innings per start and had a 7.18 ERA in the second half, mostly because he was rehabbing at the big league level. Only 8 home runs in those nearly 118 innings in the first half, 7 home runs in 26 1/3 innings in the second half. Those numbers really got skewed because the Rangers needed every bit of what they could get from Eovaldi, which wasn't much because, again, he was rehabbing at the big league level for the last month of the season, which is why he looked so bad. And it was very nice that he, rehabbed just enough to get fully healthy for that dominant, world-changing, record-setting postseason run, winning those 5 games, including Game 5 exactly 4 months ago today. But Nathan Eovaldi wasn't the only pitcher who pitched in that game. Rangers got some solid outings from Emiliano Teodo, who was doing his thing, touching 100 a couple of times, got a strikeout. Got to see the first outing from Jose Leclerc since the World Series. Like his buddy Josh Sborz, not super great. Actually, kind of worse than Sborz. Leclerc got a strikeout for his 1 out, but also walked a guy, gave up 3 hits, including a triple and a home run. Not the sharpest outing, but again, it's spring training, so it's not like the numbers particularly matter. All about getting ready for that opening day. But the rest of the relievers in this one got a couple of solid innings from Owen White, sitting 93 to 94. That's exactly what we're hoping for. Outside of Nathan Eovaldi's velocity and how he's coming along, I think Owen White is the pitcher that I'm watching most closely, that I am most optimistic about maybe cracking this rotation out of camp. We'll see how the Rangers feel about what he's doing. I think right now it's going to be Cody Bradford, but right now Cody Bradford is kind of splitting his time preparing to be a reliever and a starter in spring training. I think that means that the Rangers are impressed with what they've seen from Owen White, or they're feeling good about Jack Leiter, or one of the other depth options. Maybe it's Danny Duffy that they're feeling good about, maybe cracking this rotation out of camp. We'll see what that looks like. But also Yeri Rodriguez sitting in the upper 90s, touching 99 with a perfect inning of work. Mark Church looking pretty darn good. Didn't get a strikeout, didn't allow a hit, just allowed 1 walk. And an interesting note from Sean McFarland of the Dallas Morning News writing about Mark Church and how he became a pitcher. It's an interesting story because back in high school, Church was a shortstop and did not pitch. And one of his buddies bet him a cool $50. Hey, I bet you can't hit 90 miles an hour off the mound. Well, he took that challenge, hopped up on the mound, and threw 92. And that worked out pretty well ever since. Church is also being stretched out as a potential multi-inning reliever, which would be nice. The Rangers, don't have exactly the most reliable number 4 or 5 starters in terms of going 6-7 innings like you would hope. I mean, even the top end. I mean, I think Eovaldi you can count on to go 6-7 innings most times out when he's healthy. We'll see about John Gray, but usually he's not a guy who's going to go 7-8 innings very deep in games. And Heaney, for as effective as he can be, usually he's not pitching into the 7th inning. He was on more of a limited pitch count when he was a starter. Towards the back end of the season, the Rangers found him to be more effective in that role. So having those guys who can go multiple innings is very, very valuable. Mark Church has got an incredibly nasty slider, probably the nastiest one in the entire minor league system for the Rangers. Also up to 97 on the radar gun. That is a very positive development. If Yuri Rodriguez can stay in the strike zone, we all know how nasty his stuff plays up, but it's about being consistent with Yuri Rodriguez, with a lot of relievers as well, and with Mark Church. Diego Castillo continues to look very good. I wouldn't be surprised if he makes this Rangers pen in my updated, whenever it comes out, maybe sometime next week, the version 2 of my opening day roster projection. I think I might have to put Diego Castillo on there if I didn't already the first time out. Coming up, we'll look at a little bit of news about El Bombi still not playing in his first spring training game, why that's okay, and about Evan Carter and the sky-high expectations for that 21-year-old outfielder. Right after this word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 if your bet wins. Right now, they have got odds on the favorite for AL Rookie of the Year. Unsurprisingly, Evan Carter is number 1 right there at plus 280, ahead of Jackson Holliday at plus 340, and Wyatt Langford at plus 700. So 2 Rangers in the top 3. I think Evan Carter is definitely right to be the favorite. I mean, he absolutely lit up the postseason and the end of the regular season last year. I'm going to talk about what I think he's going to do this year. And I think those plus 280 odds are pretty darn solid at Evan Carter being the AL Rookie of the Year and the 3rd AL Rookie of the Year the Rangers have ever had. Talk about all that and more later on in this episode, but go check it out on FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Shout out to the Everydayers making Locked On Rangers your first listen every single day. We'll be back on Monday talking about this weekend's games, things we learned from these weekend games, and who knows, whatever news and notes come about from this weekend. Now, the only non-hurt Rangers starting player, position player, that is, to make his spring training debut is Adolis Garcia. Now, there is no need to fret, no need to worry. El Bombi is not hurt. It has been iterated many times that El Bombi is not hurt. El Bombi is not hurt. He is just fine, but he is still being slow played in this spring training. El Bombi had a couple of injuries at the end of last season, and he's a guy who's played a lot of games over the last few years. And he's a guy who is very, very much a guy who is much better usually in the first half, especially for those first couple years of his career. He is a very physical player. He very much goes all out, 110% every single time out. I think this year he did a little bit better of a job of, dialing that back in, of not, sprinting all out every single time, every single play, diving every single time out, because he is getting older. He's not old by any means. I think this is going to be his age 31 season. Yes, his age 31 season this year. But as you start to age a little bit, when you are a very physical player, and when he did have the very subpar first halves that he had in the first couple years of his career, thankfully this year, even though he sustained a couple injuries late on in the season, including that knee injury that was very crucial to the Rangers season because it opened up a door for young Evan Carter to get up here into the big leagues. And game 3, after he had that oblique injury, we thought, okay, well, let's see how he starts this season. He comes into spring training just fine, perfectly healthy. The Rangers saying he is just on track, exactly where they want him to be. They're going to continue to slow play him because there is no need to get him too many at-bats in spring training. Usually it takes hitters a lot less time to get ready for the season in spring training than it does for pitchers. I mean, it takes a long time to build those pitchers back up. That's why spring training is, 6 weeks long or however long it is. It always feels like it is a very long time. Even though it feels like it's just started, it also feels like it's kind of been dragging on for a little bit because I don't know about you, but I am very ready for opening day, just 27 days away from opening day. But hey, Adolis Garcia, there's no need to be concerned, no need to worry. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to see him in his first spring training game. We did finally see Jonah Heim on Wednesday in his first spring training game. I'm sure we'll get an update about Josh Young in the next, I think about next week will have been the 3-week mark, which was initially what was said. And then not much after that, we will finally see, hopefully in a couple weeks, some updates about Corey Seager and his return from sports hernia surgery. We'll see what's going on with that, but I'm not worried about any of those 3 guys. Very excited to see him on the field. Very excited to see Obambi hitting some dingers, and more importantly, some dingers in the regular season, which is just 27 days away. Another injury update. I guess that wasn't really as much an injury update. It was a non-injury injury update. But Max Scherzer is not currently in camp, hasn't been since February 28th. He is back home because there is not much he can do in his rehab at this point. We will know at the 12-week mark after his surgery from that herniated disc that he had surgery on back in December. That 12-week mark will be March 7th. That will be kind of a key milestone for seeing, all right, how far along is Max Scherzer? How much has he progressed? What's going on with him? Is he going to be ready in June like we thought? Or is it going to be a little bit longer? Or is it going to be a little bit shorter? I don't see much of a scenario where he is back sooner than some point in June. I mean, expecting him back in May feels a little bit foolish because he is in his late 30s at this point, does have a lot of mileage on his body. Pitching is a very physical, difficult thing to do, and he's got 3,000 plus major league innings under his belt. So just hoping that he gets the clean bill of health. Next week we'll know more about that. But good for Max Scherzer getting to go home in the middle of spring training, go hang out with his family. Very much looking forward to hopefully some positive updates on that next week, because the Rangers are going to need Max Scherzer, every bit of him, and hopefully the same level of Max Scherzer that the Rangers got down the stretch in the regular season, and which was the fully healthy version of Max Scherzer, not the kind of banged up, kind of pitching through it version of Max Scherzer that we saw in the playoffs, in the ALCS, and the World Series. Now let's talk about the kid, Evan Carter. I'm sure you've been waiting for this for a while. The Evan Carter predictions overall season preview for the 21-year-old outfielder. In case you forgot, he's 21 years old. Yeah, this Evan Carter kid that he came up and hit third for the Rangers in the World Series, and during that World Series run was playing incredible defense, hitting incredibly well, set a record for most doubles by a rookie in a single playoff run with 9, hit 300 with an on-base of 400 and a slugging over 500, a 3.45 slash line in the freaking playoffs as a guy who just turned 21, just a month before those playoffs started. This kid was absolutely incredible down the stretch. Right now, like I said, on FanDuel, he is the odds-on favorite to win AL Rookie of the Year. Last time the Rangers had a Rookie of the Year, that was Neftali Feliz back in 2010. They do have one other American League Rookie of the Year. Some of you might remember this. I do not remember this because I would not have been born for another 20 years after this happened. But back in 1974, Mike Hargrove was the first Texas Ranger to win American League Rookie of the Year. The Rangers had some other guys finish close. Elvis Andrus finished second. The Rangers had Josh Young finish in the top 4 this past year. I thought he should have been higher than 4, but that is a conversation for yesterday's show, if you want to hear me complain about that. Also had Adolis Garcia finish 4th back in 2021. So the Rangers had some pretty good rookies, and they've got 2 pretty darn good rookies who might both finish in the top 3 or top 4 this year in Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford. But depending on the publication, Evan Carter might be ranked below Wyatt Langford in terms of the Rangers prospect rankings and the expectations for him this year. I had Evan Carter above Wyatt Langford because I thought, Evan Carter's ceiling might not be quite as high as Wyatt Langford's, but this kid's already done it at the big league level. Not just at the big league level, but for a team competing for a playoff spot that needed every bit of what he was providing in that regular season, and on a World Series run to a championship. The guy was absolutely nails in every aspect of the game. But are some of those expectations that are being placed on him, what are the expectations for him at this point? Is the expectation that he's going to do exactly what he did in the regular season, where he hit 306 with 5 home runs, 1.6 baseball reference WAR in just 23 games? He also had an on-base of 413 and slugged 645, an OPS plus of 182. Is he going to be 82% better than the average major league hitter this year as a rookie? I don't think so. I think that's a bit too lofty of an expectation to put on this 21-year-old kid. But expecting him to be good, expecting him to be even very good, I think that's not anything that's off limits. I think there are obviously some questions about Evan Carter's game, but I think the obvious good things that he is good at, the things that he will always be doing very, very well, I think those far outweigh any kind of questions that come about Evan Carter. And again, he's still so young. The ceiling is incredibly high for this kid. Coming up and talk about what I'm expecting for Evan Carter this year, why some of those expectations could be a little bit dangerous from outside sources, and what he has to do to fulfill all those expectations in his first actual full rookie season in the major leagues. Right after this word from our sponsors. Shout out to the Everydayers picking Locked On Rangers, your first listen every single day. Later next week, I'll be talking with a member of Baseball Prospectus, not Grant Schiller, about their Rangers season preview, and then projecting the Rangers for 84 wins. Look forward to that a little bit next week, probably sometime on Wednesday or Thursday's show. Now, Evan Carter is coming in with incredibly high expectations, but what are some of those projections projecting him for at this point? Well, Baseball Reference's projections, I think some of the overall slash lines and overall numbers in general look to be pretty solid. But the questions I have, their reliability they put on their own confidence in their projections is at 24%. And I think the main question I have with Baseball Reference is why are they projecting Evan Carter for 238 plate appearances next year? I feel like that's the main part that I have a big question with. The batting average projection, the on-base, slugging, home run numbers, all those other numbers, those look about in line with what I would expect for Evan Carter. But it's just the amount of playing time that he's going to get. If he's getting only 238 plate appearances, either he has had some massive, massive injury that has taken away most of his season, or I don't even know. I don't even know. It basically just would be that. Because 238 plate appearances is like a third of a season. And I don't see any scenario at all outside of some kind of major injury, or I don't know, maybe he murders somebody and gets suspended. I don't have any idea what would make Evan Carter. Not that I think Evan Carter is going to murder anybody. He's a very morally upstanding young man with a very good head on his shoulders. I don't think he's going to commit any crimes to get him taken off the field for 2/3 of the season. But anyway, the overall rates, batting average 274 this is according to Baseball Reference. Home runs 10. So for a full season, basically multiply these kind of by about 3. On base in the 350s, slugging just 5 points shy of 500, an 852 OPS. That is a very solid season. Also 6 stolen bases in those 238 plate appearances, 12 doubles, 2 triples. I think that's solid. I think that is a solid projection of the slash line. If he's got an OPS around 850 for a full season as a big leaguer and is getting at least 500 plate appearances, because I don't see a scenario where he is going to be platooned. I mean, he's not going to be great against lefties at this point. I don't think he might end up getting good against lefties, which is one of those questions. But he's not going to be a platoon player. The Rangers have already said that. They said, yeah, he hasn't hit lefties super well in his minor league career. Hasn't had a whole lot of plate appearances against them. So, I mean, that's kind of the expectation there. And according to Fangraphs, they project him to have a 2.8 WAR season. According to Zips, the Steamer is less high on that, but Zips projects him for 138 games, 617 plate appearances, has about 15 home runs, hitting 259, on base in the mid 350s, slugging just over 400. So in OPS, I believe that is 770. If my math is mathing correctly, yes, exactly 770 OPS, a 2.8 WAR player. That's solid. I think that's a solid projection. I think that on-base percentage is probably about right. Maybe the batting average might be a little bit higher. They also project him for 19 stolen bases. I'd go on the higher end on that. 15 home runs is I'd say a solid projection. I'm hoping he'd hit more, but if that's the season that he has, a 770 OPS, a 2.8 WAR player, while probably playing primarily in left field, that is a good rookie season. That is good enough to win Rookie of the Year. Most years, I don't know if it'll be good enough with whatever Jackson Holliday's doing, however much he plays, if he's in the major leagues from day one, if Wyatt Langford's in the major leagues from day one. But I think that's a solid projection. I think the big questions about Evan Carter, obviously, are can he hit lefties? Can he hit for power? And really, that's about it. If those are your two questions, can you hit lefties, which there's a lot more right-handed pitchers in the big leagues than lefties, and can you hit for power, which he did. Granted, it wasn't a whole lot of home run power in the playoffs, more so in the regular season. But this guy, the raw power, he's still very young. Again, guys don't usually hit their full physical maturity until like about their mid-20s, because there were still a lot of questions about if Josh Young could hit for power when he was in college, which was about when he was Evan Carter's age. That was Josh Young. I mean, Josh Young was in his sophomore year when he was 20, and when he turned 21, or his age 21 season, basically. And then Evan Carter's just, oh, here we go. Here's me in the playoffs in the regular season, and also down the stretch, like just absolutely crushing it. So I think those questions about Evan Carter hitting lefties, I think those are fair concerns. I think his strikeout rate from last year was definitely a fair concern. I mean, it was something that he did not do well. He did a great job of not chasing, not expanding the zone, but his strikeout rate was 32%. His whiff rate was 30.2%. That's not good, which especially means that he is swinging and missing in the zone, which is extra not good. But his walk rate was absolutely elite at 16%. I mean, the guy has just such an insanely good batting eye. And because of that, he's getting better pitches to hit. And because he's getting better pitches to hit, he does not have to be as country strong to hit more home runs, because he is getting those quality pitches, and it is much easier to do damage on those kinds of pitches than just having to be extra strong and hitting bad pitches out. I don't think he's going to do a whole lot of that this year, but I think projecting forward, hoping he's going to have, I think probably a couple of seasons in his career of 4 to 6, being a 4 to 6 win player, especially if he starts to play more center field than Leody Taveras. But right now, that's Leody's job. It's Leody's job to lose, and I think that's the right call. I think Leody Taveras playing every single day is something that he's earned with what he did last year. And Evan Carter also has earned the right to play every single day. It'll be harder for him to accrue big WAR numbers while playing just in left field, but as we saw in the playoffs, this guy's defense is incredible. The things that Evan Carter does well are things that do not slump. That's why I think the ceiling is so incredibly high on this kid. So at worst, I think he's going to be a 2.5 WAR player. I just don't see a scenario where he is worse than that. He is incredibly fast. He's in the top 97% of baseball, the top 3% of baseball, I should say, in sprint speed last year. His range is very good. His reads in the outfield are very darn good. The arm, I think, is better than expected. I mean, he's made some of these really, really great throws. He had a lot of outfield assists last year, a lot more than I expected him to. I mean, the arm isn't, Leody level or El Bombi level of strength, but the accuracy is there, and he gets the ball well. He gets it out quickly. He makes good throw decisions. And he is a very darn good fielder. He has good on base and good speed. All three of those things are things that do not slump, which is why I like signing Shin-Soo Choo at the time and signing players like that who, even if they are on the older side, you worry about the power numbers, sustaining that elite batter's eye. That's never going to go away. He's not going to suddenly get incredibly slow, and he's not going to suddenly forget how to play defense or run the bases very well. One of the things that I was most surprised by his projections for Zips and for Fangraphs is all of these projections are almost all of them are expecting him to be a negative defender and a negative base runner. I don't know how they expect that with what he was doing in the playoffs, with what he's done in his minor league career, especially if he's doing it in left field. Left field is not the hardest position to play in the outfield. That's center field. You're covering a lot more ground. There's a lot more expected of you. Or it's right field where you're having to make a lot further throws, having to have a lot bigger arm. But left field, most places, even in the tricky ones, he was playing great defense in left field. You guys might remember a certain catch that he made in a certain other stadium in Texas and double off a certain player on a certain hated team that just got a contract extension this year. An absolutely delightful leaping grab at the wall in Houston by those garage doors in what was, I believe, his first game might have been his second game in Houston, but one of his first games already playing the most difficult left field, I think, in the entire major leagues. Like, that is an incredibly difficult park to play left field because of how weird it is. And he was doing it at an elite level at such a young age. This kid is so insanely good at the things that do not vary. Now, his batting average and how much power he's going to hit for, those determine whether he's going to be, because I think at worst he's going to be very good player. But if he can hit for a solid average in the 270s, 280 range, that on base is going to be in the elite range. And if he can hit for 20, 25 bombs a year and he's playing center field, that goes from a guy who is probably a 3 to 5 win player to a guy who is a 5 to 7 win player. That's MVP range. I'm not saying Evan Carter is going to be an MVP this year or even any year in his career, but those are the kind of thing that determine what kind of player he is going to be. At the very worst, that's why I'm so incredibly excited about Evan Carter, because at worst, he's already a darn good player. And at his best, I mean, we've all seen how stinking good this kid can be. And oh, by the way, in case you forgot, he's only 21 years old. That's going to do it for this week's shows. Thank y'all so much for listening. A big week. Finally, spring training games are back. We are just 27 days away from opening day. Going to have a lot of great content for you in the next couple weeks. So thank y'all so much for listening and subscribing. And until next time, don't forget to enjoy World Series champion Texas Rangers baseball.